Welcome back to Beyond the Buckets. I'm happy to have my guest today, Jared Hummel. Welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me, Chris. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm glad to have you on. I really enjoyed our pre-call. We probably should have started press record early because we had a really good in-depth conversation. But looking forward to expand upon that. But for everybody that may not know you, why don't you give them a fun fact about yourself? And even if somebody knows you, they might not even know.
Yeah, this came up earlier today, and I usually don't toot my own horn, but a couple of years ago was the 75-year anniversary of the Minnesota High School State Tournament, and I was the number 74 all-time player in the state of Minnesota. And what everyone always brings up is that number 75 is Herb Brooks, which I'm sure most of you have heard about. But it's pretty humbling to be in that presence because obviously I didn't make quite the splash he did in the hockey world.
Wow. And you mentioned, playing hockey and being the 75th. Congratulations, by the way. That's big news.
Yeah.
But tell me about your hockey playing career growing up, and then obviously, when you got to college and all of that.
Yeah. So, like you said, we probably should have started 10 minutes earlier, but Minnesota is kind of the hockey state, right? And you can kind of compare it to Indiana basketball or Texas football.
Hmm.
So it's a huge thing, and it provided a lot of really cool opportunities. Grew up in a small town in southwestern Minnesota where hockey wasn't necessarily as big a thing, but we had a bubble that we played in, and sometimes it was colder inside the bubble than it was outside because you had the refrigeration and I think it's just like all the things you learn growing up through sports is just so impactful because being the only one out at open skating when you're 5 6 years old leads to a lot of work ethic and good discipline, and that ended up moving to the Twin Cities in middle school because I was playing so much up here that it didn't make sense to keep traveling, and had the opportunity to play at the Academy of Holy Angels, which is a private school in the Twin Cities. And we went to the state hockey tournament 4 years in a row, won it twice. And that's, something I'll never forget because I think we set the attendance record at the Excel Center, which is where the Minnesota Wild play, 3 times in my career. So over 18,000
Wow.
fans. And then from there, went to the United States Hockey League, where I played on a team that set the regular season record for most wins in a regular season. And then we ended up losing in the championship of the playoffs. But again, just kind of a crazy experience. And then went into college with a team that hadn't won the conference in 65 years. And in the period of I actually only played 3 years. I graduated early, but in the 3 years we were there, we ended up winning the conference and going to the NCAA tournament. And saying all this is not to brag, but just to say that, being part of programs that maybe historically weren't the strongest and watching those build, I think has really led to a lot of the principles and life models that I carry with me today as an entrepreneur and a leader in business.
Yeah, definitely. As we talked about before we jumped on, there's so many parallels with athletes and having success in other areas, especially business. And the reason I believe is because there's such a work ethic that you must have when you are a high level athlete competing collegiately or in the pros. And you build these building blocks of hard work, dedication, extreme focus to basically get an outcome that you desire. And you don't always get that desired outcome, but the hard work and effort that you put in really help you in a lot of areas. And I'm a big proponent of, if you are good at something, I feel that you can be good in other areas as well. Like if you've really mastered something, like if you've mastered playing hockey at a high level or basketball or baseball or football basketball or any sport really, you have the propensity to really excel in other areas if you're going to put that same time and work ethic in. And most of the time, if you're able to put the work in, you're going to be able to see the results eventually. And that's why I love sports, and that's why I love the parallels that sports has with business.
Yeah, yeah. What is it? I think it's Malcolm Gladwell. I forget what the title of the book is, but it talks about like the 10,000 hour rule,
Hmm.
and I think the rule applies to anything that you do in life, whether it's you know trying to raise your children or trying to be an expert water skier or be a multi-million-dollar CEO. But I think, like you said, it's just not to rail on academia, but like you can only learn so much in a book, right? And sports teach you, the practical lessons and like you said, the hard work, determination, how to deal with adversity, resilience. Like the list goes on and on. And yeah, it's you know, we have a daughter that is just turned 2 months old, so we're new to parenting.
Yeah.
But like my wife and I have already talked about, like we really want her to play at least one team sport and one individual sport because you learn such different skills being on your own, having to survive, and then also like the team camaraderie stuff. So yeah, there's just, I mean, we could probably talk for hours about all the
Yeah.
lessons learned and and whatnot from the days of sports.
For sure. Yeah, I want to talk about our kids too, but I also want to talk about one thing that you just mentioned, and you talked about education. And education, in my opinion, is changing rapidly, and the way that we teach our young people needs to change to the times. They're used to seeing things in short formats where it's a minute or 15 seconds, or they're scrolling through their stories or Snapchats or Instagram, all of that stuff. And it's got to be fed quickly to them, and it's got to be entertaining enough for them to understand and comprehend it. And I think we do a disservice to our young people when we do old and antiquated ideas and still try to put them in 2021 as we get into 2022. Like those same things don't work. And so I teach a couple classes per day, and I really just try to put myself in their shoes and what would make them like take the information and utilize it in their actual life and have day to day application of the concepts that we're trying to teach, rather than they just memorize whatever it is that you want or what's going to be on the test or quizzes. And I think that does them a disservice. What do you think about the education before we talk about our kids?
Yeah. I don't know if I'm the most qualified to talk about education, but yeah, no, I heard. I was at a conference last week, and the keynote speaker, actually, his mom was a teacher. I mean, we're going back probably to the 70s or 80s, but she had a rule that if any kid failed the test, that the whole class had to teach that person and help that person and coach that person until everyone passed. And so like I don't know if that's the exact parallel to the question you asked, but
Yeah.
it was just really interesting because it was less about like you said, like memorizing pass fail. It actually created a team environment where they had to bring up the bottom to all be successful. And
Right.
with that, they were not like they were testing better on like state boards and all of that stuff because the kids were teaching other people, right? So it's kind of like the learn, do, teach methodology that she brought to the classroom, and that was obviously like really innovative at that time.
Right.
But to your point, like there's so many uh, I've met a lot of really book smart people. Like, I mean, there was a guy that my dad used to work with that was a Harvard graduate that was doing janitorial work. Like it doesn't it doesn't always like equate perfectly. Like you can be a rocket scientist when it comes to book smarts, but life life is happening so fast, technology is happening so fast, like dynamics are changing so quickly that um like you said, like it's kind of antiquated how a lot of the academic world works. And you see a lot of those things of like kids graduate college and they don't know how to balance a checkbook or save money or like, but those are the things that you know get the American and probably world population in boatloads of debt and credit card debt and, and all of that stuff. And it's like, if we could teach that, I mean, again, I'm not necessarily qualified to talk about it, but based on my life experience, it would have been really nice to have some of those tools heading into adulthood.
Definitely. I always wanted somebody, I always like music and I can still recite lyrics from these songs, that I knew growing up. And I wish somebody would put together like textbooks in a music form, because for me, I would be
Yeah,
able to, take the sounds in and the words, and then I can tell the story in my head. And that would be something for me. Like for me, I'm a kinesthetic learner, or I can listen and hear it and then I can basically apply it. I'm not really a big lecture type of person. I like
yeah,
I like to be moving with it and be kinesthetic, or listen and then take it all in. And even today, like if I have to give a speech or anything, I try not to use any notes at all. I mean, I rarely need to, but if I try to go as much as, not improv, but like um, I would say like prepared improv, because I'm preparing in my mind, but I'm not actually looking or referring to things when I'm speaking. But that's just how I personally learned. But
well,
I go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, I think, as like psychology and mental health and all of those things are becoming like more prevalent in our society. I think, it's pretty obvious that there's very different kinds of learners, and like there's a reason. Oh, excuse me. There's a reason that some of the craziest entrepreneurs in our country's history like never made it through college, is because
Right.
that's just not the way they learned and were successful. And I mean, I could tell you probably more than half of the successful entrepreneurs that I'm around were C students or worse, because it's just they had a different learning style. And so to try to force one size fits all on everyone,
Yeah.
like you said, just doesn't seem consummate with the world we live in today. Like all the sophistication and technology we have, we should
Yeah.
be able to do a little better.
And not to mention that you might not need to go to college anymore, because what they're teaching doesn't really apply to the new world in a lot of instances. Like, I do think that college is important as far as being able to get through something that is difficult and hard, but at the same time, most of the stuff that I use in college, I don't apply to my everyday life. Now, my major was different, and I didn't walk away with much debt because I had a scholarship in undergrad. But in graduate school, like, I had a huge loan because I couldn't afford it,
Yeah.
and I wasn't making a lot of money, as a post grad. And so, you're stuck in this situation, and then a lot of these people, they have to pay these loans back that they end up paying for, 35, 40 years, even more. And, what's the return on that? Can somebody go out there and just create a new app and become a millionaire or a billionaire? Or do you get stuck into this situation where you go to school and things like that? That's why I do think, like, our educational system needs an upgrade. We can't put people in so much debt and they're just working just to pay off their debt. And what are they really accomplishing at the end of the day? And it's probably not a discussion for you and I, but it's just thoughts out there that I think can be done better. And both of us went through the school system and we utilized it, but I'm not really sure how much I've learned much more, in my opinion, from actually doing things, failing in business, failing in coaching, and figuring it out that way, rather than what I learned at, sitting down at school and doing all these papers and projects.
Yeah, no, we just had a couple of interns this summer at our digital agency, and I didn't go to school for marketing either, so I guess I'm not putting mine to good use as well. But I asked them, because I did, as a business major, like we did have to take a couple like marketing or communications courses, and even I mean that was 2007 to 2010, and we were still learning about how like Coca-Cola, like brands billboards and stuff like that. And I was like, I asked them, I'm like, well, has it changed? Like, do you actually learn about like digital marketing and analytics and Google and social strategies? And they're like, nope, it's still the same. Like, how did Coca-Cola do this? How did Pepsi do that? And I'm like,
Yeah.
man, like like no one, I mean, not that TV commercials like don't exist anymore, but I mean, it's such a different world of how how people are marketing, and yeah, it just hasn't happened. I think I might be corrected on this, but I swear a couple of years ago, Google actually piloted a program to like pay kids to not go to college and start working with them because I don't know if the purpose was that they needed that much more talent or that we're just trying to do what you said. Me and you probably aren't the right people, but we're trying to kind of change the stigma of it. But
For
yeah,
for sure. Yeah, it's interesting, and we live in a different age now, and I just think you have to look at things differently. But again, we're probably not the people to discuss that. But back to your daughter, congratulations,
yeah.
2.5 months. I have a daughter that is 1.5 and a son that is 3.5.
Ooh.
And you mentioned that you want her to play a team sport as well as an individual sport, and I'm completely on board with that. Our son does martial arts now. He's in karate and has taught him so much. Like, little kids are little kids no matter where they're at, but it's taught him a lot of discipline. It's taught him a lot of, like, he wants things all the time, and kids want them now. And so he's learning a little bit more patience and stuff like that. But I want him to get punched in the mouth, like not literally, but I want him to have to go through some things in life, because if you can go through that, if you can go through this martial arts system, or if you can go through learning how to play the piano, you're going to be more equipped to handle the difficult things that come in your life. That's one of the reasons why I love working out. Like, I'm in my home gym now, but I work out hard every single day. So if I work out hard, the rest of the things that I have to do are going to be a lot easier in my mind, and it just makes my day so much better when I can accomplish something. You feel like you've accomplished it. But if I have a hard workout, everything else is probably going to be pretty easy for the most part throughout the day. So that's my take on doing hard things and doing them often. So everything else is going to be a little bit easier when it comes your way.
Yeah, like you said, I think for most of my life it was hockey, 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 and so you get so used to being dependent on the team and the practice schedule and and showing up. And one of the things I've tried to get better at, I'm still candidly not great at it, is kind of being self sufficient on my own. And I've always been a big tennis guy, even though I didn't like play competitively, but like you look at that, like, the pros, I guess, like have a coach and whatnot, but like you're on your own, right? Like if if you win or lose a hockey game, it could be because the goalie didn't play well or the forward didn't score the goal or whatever. But when you're playing singles tennis, like you said, the punch in the mouth, like when you have a bad day, like you have to figure out how to get over it yourself. Like you can't you can't depend on your winger or the second line or whatever it is to bail you out. And so I think that's kind of the interesting thing. As I graduated, I really got into like triathlons, and um, you know, I had never really knew how to swim. I say, like, I knew how to swim with a beer in my hand, but I didn't necessarily know how to swim.
Right.
And so just going through the process of having to go to the pool by myself, 3-4 days a week and do something that I wasn't good at and watch videos of how to get better at it. And, I had a coach for a little bit, but just kind of taking that initiative, like you said, of creating the experience you want. And I agree with you 100%. The last couple of months, uh, frankly, I haven't been super disciplined with baby coming on board and trying to find the new schedule. And I used to do 5 to 6 days a week in the morning working out too. And it's just like a whole different ball game when you lose that little piece. And literally right before we got on the call, my wife and I were like, we got to stop this. Like, we got to get back to the gym. Like, this
Right.
isn't sustainable. But yeah, it's, I can tell you it makes my day probably 500% more productive and better, and better frame of mind. I mean, the list goes on and on.
For sure. Well, you're not in the boat alone. We were in the same boat after child one. I would say I had a dad bod, and I would look at pictures of like, oh my goodness, that was me. And so we decided after round two, we were going to make sure that we made that a priority. So, we kind of look at each other every day and we're like, all right, what do you need to do today? All right, I need to work out. Okay, go ahead. Or you need to do this, or I need to do this. So we try to make sure that we get whatever we need to do out, and the other will help out with the kids and make sure they have what they need. But if we are at our best, we can now be the best parents. If we're tired and we're irritable and we don't have, the energy to wake up, and we stay that way the entire day, well, the kids aren't going to be happy. We're not going to be happy. And so we always try to make sure that we're trying to do that. And, some people would look at it as selfish, but you have to be selfish. Like it's the airplane analogy where when you get on an airplane and they tell you, when the oxygen masks drop, if they do, you need to make sure that you put yours on first, then put it on the children. And I try to live that every day, or we try to live that every day, because, if we're not at our best, we're not going to be able to be our best for them. And that would be selfish on our part to not be our best for them.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I feel like the workout is kind of the linchpin of my life. It sounds extreme, but
Yep.
like once the workout stops, then my eating routine stops, and once my eating routine stops, then my sleeping routine stops, and like it just seems to spiral fairly quickly. And then, like you said, like when your eating routine stops, then and then your sleeping routine stops, then all of a sudden I used to go to bed at 11:30, 12. Now I'm falling asleep at 9:30, 10 because I'm hungry and lazy and stiff and and all of that. So like, you end up wasting 3 hours where you could have taken 1 hour to work out and spent the other 2 hours with your kid or whatever you're doing. So yeah, it's man, I mean, progress, not perfection, right? As I keep telling myself, is like, you got to get back on the horse, but to bring it all the way back, I think that's, some of the lessons I've learned through sports and whatnot is, you might get blown out a game. You might lose a heartbreaker in overtime, but there's always another day, always another game. Right. So,
right. And you'll always figure it out. And, we don't have it set perfectly at all. There's days where it's like, oh, it's a drag, but at the end of the day, like you just got to keep chopping wood every single day. And yeah, that's what life's all about. And I love the fact that you did the triathlons. I used to do half marathons. I never wanted to do a full marathon just because I just didn't want to beat my body up like that. That's a lot of pounding on your body. But I remember, this is kind of a nasty story, but since we're on the podcast and we're among friends, I'll tell you. But I was trying to get a PR on, we were at the Disneyland half marathon, and probably like mile 8, like I'm looking at my splits and I'm like at like under 6:30. And I had to go to the bathroom like really bad, and people were stopping over to go to the bathroom, and I'm like, I can't stop running. So I tried to keep running, and then all of a sudden I couldn't hold it anymore. So I urinated down my tights, and it mixed in with some of the sweat, and it was in the morning, so it wasn't a big deal. But I ended up PRing on that. I got like 132 at the time, and so my wife was a little bit behind me, but I get back on the shuttle and I'm iced up. I got ice on and then I just smell myself, and nobody wanted to sit next to me on the, because I had sweat and urine, and that's what I smelled like. We're on the Disney, kids are getting ready to go to Disneyland, because now you wake up at like 4, the race is like somewhere at like 5, and I was on that thing like around 7, and then, it was one of the most funniest things, but a story that I'll always remember, because I was not gonna stop, and I was just trying to hammer through it and show that relentless mentality. But when you talked about your triathlon, that's what brought up. So I've never told that story on
live
on a live podcast.
It's a real thing, man. Like they always say it. I've never done a full Ironman triathlon by any means. Like I would do either like sprints or the Olympic, and like you said, like I mean, just the time commitment, but the body commitment of doing some of those full length things is a little overwhelming. But I mean, it was if we're all being candid, like I mean, that's one of the things. Like you have to put your wetsuit on, 35 minutes before you start, and so yeah, I think there's been plenty of times where you before you start the race that your wetsuit is actually full of other things other than just water. And yeah, I've done a couple ultra off-road marathons. I've actually never run a real marathon on a road, but I love like running through the woods and all of that. But that's kind of the same. Like there's no porta potties when you're in the middle of the woods, and so that's kind of like a standard expectation almost in that sport. And it took me a little while to get comfortable with it, but it's a real thing.
At least I'm not the only crazy one. Uh, so let's talk a little bit about business.
Yeah.
Why don't you give everybody a little bit of background on what you do, and yeah, we'll go from there.
Yeah. So, I mean, my career as a whole has been a little bit industry agnostic. I think, as we talk about sports and stuff, like the things I pride myself on is I happen to be pretty good at math and I love building teams. And so that's been the consistent throughout my career. I've done a lot of turnaround consulting, high growth startups, and acquisition type work for small to mid-sized companies. And my current role is a company called Parqa, which is a digital marketing agency. We have a parent or sister company that does staffing and recruiting. So our digital marketing agency does digital marketing for staffing and recruiting firms across the nation.
Hmm.
And kind of the same. I actually came into the company on the Verseek side as their CFO, and this division was struggling a little bit and had recently just lost its leader, and so I decided that it would be a good idea, since I knew nothing about sales and marketing, to move positions to a job where all I did was sales and marketing. And yeah, in the last 3.5 years, we've grown substantially from I think about 4 employees to about 30 when you consider some of our outsourced consultants. And yeah, I feel like we're just getting going. They're talking in our world anyways about the Great Resignation and all the jobs that are open in the United States right now, and all the people that are leaving after COVID and reassessing, what their life is like and what their priorities are and all that stuff. And we've been lucky enough to this point, knock on wood, I'll probably get an email after we get off this, but we haven't lost one employee, and have grown well over 100% this year. So yeah, it's been good, and it's just a constant learning, right? Like people thought I was crazy that I would leave something I knew I was good at and do something that I had no logical business doing, but it's been a lot of fun.
For sure. Touching a little bit on the movement in so many different industries. I know a lot of friends during the last 2 years that have moved on to different professions, and you had a whole lot of time to sit, and you had a whole lot of time to think about where you wanted to be, and these other opportunities started to present themselves. So why do you think that was the case within the last couple of years? Do you think people were really unhappy with their current roles, and then they started to say, hey, there might be other options out there, or what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of thoughts. I mean, one is like you had a lot of you had pent up demand to leave because no one left for a year and a half, because if they did still have their job, there wasn't a lot of commerce going on for a long period of time, and so I think that's part of it. The other part is, like, not only did we have COVID, but we had a lot of the stuff around George Floyd and all of the racial injustice stuff, and I think leaders of organizations were really under the spotlight of how they reacted to you know, those two major major instances, you know, whether it was getting your pay cut or how you were going to handle diversity and inclusion in the workplace. And I think after the economy really, you know, took back off, I think a lot of people, you know, went back and took mental note of of how their leadership handled that, and if that's something that they wanted to be a part of long term, or if they wanted to find something else. And then the third is probably just, especially in our industry, because it's almost all commission driven, and I know you come out of sales as well, is you had a lot of high performers, you know, that were making really good money when they weren't doing when they weren't doing deals. You know, when their pay gets cut by 50, 70, whatever, 100%, like now is the time to make a change, right? Like the barrier when you're making six figures or, you know, really good money, there's always that like, well, I can't leave. Like, I got to support my family. I got to support this. Well, you strip that away and people start to look authentically inside at themselves and say, this is, this is what is going to bring me passion. And this is what's going to drive me. So I would say, like, off the top of my head, those are probably the three biggest factors that I've seen and what we've heard. So
Yeah. Why do you think so many companies need to hire staffing agencies and recruiters to hire for their company? Is it just a manpower thing, or is it just finding a better candidate using these recruiting services, things like that? I have a lot of friends that are in the recruiting space, especially being here in the Bay Area with a lot of the high tech agency, you know, Facebook, Google, you know, Twitter. Everybody's kind of out here, and I have friends in all these in these positions, and they're looking for high level individuals, and they're trying to scoop them off of LinkedIn, or you know, there's just a bunch of different things that they're doing to try to hire high level people. So there's a many places that you can go with that question, but just want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, prior to going to Verseek and then Parqa, like the only staffing agency I knew that existed was Robert Half, because they do a lot of finance, and that was that was my background. And over the 4 years, I always tell people, like, almost every single week I find a different staffing or consulting firm that does something that I never even knew knew existed. So there's a lot of reasons. I think on the permanent hire side, you know, a lot of companies, even the Googles of the world and stuff, like their talent acquisition teams are kind of built for like the majority of positions, I guess. And so you know, they're placing a lot of the account managers and, you know, IT people and, you know, kind of that mid-level. But as you get into search firms, you know, it's a very long and strenuous process to find like the next executive, or, you know, the next A player, the next like senior manager. And so a lot of times the internal TA teams don't necessarily have that capability. They're used to working on, you know, 20 or 30 different positions at one time, where you know, a search firm specifically you know, really hones in on that one role and make sure you find the right person as, you know, their experts. On the staffing side, I mean, the stat is by 2025, 65% of the workforce is going to be contingent labor. And so, I mean, that's generally, like, that's the definition of staffing, I guess, right? Like, we're living in this gig economy where, you know, millennials in particular, but just the world as it is today, like, you don't have pensions, you don't have loyalty, like, you don't have as many unions, like, you don't have lifers anymore. And so companies are kind of calibrating to that and saying, like, we have this app that we need to be built. We're going to bring in 70 people that specialize in Java development to build this app. But after that, like, why keep them on payroll? Like, you know, why would we do that? So, you know, I think just, I mean, especially after COVID and like the whole remote work thing, I think a lot of the big companies came out and said, you know, we used to limit our talent pool to the Bay Area, or make people move to the Bay Area to work at our multi-gazillion-dollar facility. And now they're like, well, screw that. Like, we can get the best person in Des Moines, Iowa, or Jacksonville, Florida, or whatever. Like, let's get the best person to get the biggest result. And I think That's really what, I think staffing is, ripe for massive growth
Right.
into the coming years.
And it makes sense for a lot of companies because if we go through a staffing agency, your company, Parka, is it Park or Parka?
Parka, like the
Parka,
winter
yeah.
jackets that you wear
So,
in Minnesota.
so if we go through you, let's just say I was trying to hire for my company and we want to use you. Well, you're going to have them on your payroll. You're going to pay for their benefits. You're going to do all these things, and they're just basically contracting with us. And that makes a lot of sense for a company when you look at, your overhead. You don't have to, there's not much overhead. You just know that you're paying this amount of money. You don't know exactly what that employee for Parka is getting paid. You just know that you're going to pay Parka X amount for these services. And I think that's how yours works. I know that's how
Yeah.
others have worked in this area. But is that kind of how it works out for you guys too?
Yep. So yeah, so our sister, it's actually Verseek, is the
Okay,
one that does like the staffing
got it.
part of
Okay,
our business, but I mean that doesn't matter. But yeah, like you said, it's W-2 on our payroll, our benefits, um, and then if the person doesn't work out, it's on us, right? Like if it's not the right fit or whatever, like then we're obligated to go find a better fit, and so you really shorten the hiring process because that's, Verseek has a team of experts and a pool of talent for specific positions that we focus on placing and yeah, it's at the end of the day, you're paying a premium, right? Because we have to make money in the process. But if the person only works 30 hours, you only pay them 30 hours. If they go on vacation, you don't pay PTO. You don't have to pay employer taxes. You don't like there. All those things are not your problem anymore. All you have to do is make a phone call and say, I need 3 HR people, or I need a controller for 6 months, or, person X went on maternity leave or is taking a sabbatical. Well, that those are all things that you have to deal with full-time employees that when you have staff augmentation, you're not at risk as a
Yeah,
business
for
from
sure.
adverse effects happening.
Well, there's a lot of layers to this, and in the industry that I used to be in as well, insurance, it was very similar, where there was all of these Blue Cross, Blue Shield, Kaiser, Sutter. There's just a bunch of insurance companies that provide insurance, HealthNet, United Healthcare, all of those. And so what if they had to do all the employee benefits for all of the companies, they wouldn't have the bandwidth. So what they do is they would hire a middleman, which would be a broker, and the brokers would go out to the companies to pitch them the Kaiser, the healthcare, or United Healthcare, Blue Cross or Blue Shield, and try to find the companies the best rates. And so the the carrier, which would be like a Blue Cross or Blue Shield, they would pay the brokers a percent of whatever their annual premium is or monthly premium, and as long as they pay their bill, the broker gets paid that amount every single month, and as long as you keep that group, you get paid the residual income. So a lot of times you would get this group, you'd probably work on it for about 3 months. There may be like some other things here and there throughout the year, but you would be getting paid this residual income this whole year. But the carrier's fine with it because all they do is provide the insurance. And really, they're going to take your insurance premiums and invest it anyway, uh,
Right.
because they don't want to pay claims. That's the last thing they want to do. And then they've got a broker that handles any issues. So if you don't have a paid claim, they go to the broker. The broker now has to work with the carrier instead of the uh, the employer having to go directly to the carrier. So there's a lot of industries like that, but if you don't know about it, it's very difficult for you to wrap your head around it. But in most situations, follow the money trail, but the people at the very top, so the employers that you work for, they're in a good situation, but they want to make it easier on them, so they will outsource and hire you, but it's still a good situation for you, and it's still a good situation for the employee. So it's like a win-win-win-win.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of where Parka is probably like as similar, more similar to that, in that, we're an outsourced marketing agency, and so it's like it's the 80-20 rule, right? Like you can only be good at so many things, and when you're talking like insurance, like like you said, they're basically investment companies. On top of that, they have their underwriters and all of that, and they like, I want to be good at that. I don't want to have like a robust sales team. And so they go out and find brokers to sell their product for them so they don't have to handle that part. And that's kind of how we pitch ourselves at Parka too, is like we work with staffing and recruiting firms across the nation, and predominantly those are sales guys, right? Like a lot of the owners are sales people that that were in staffing and recruiting sales and then decided to start their own. And
Yep.
so it's like, well, why would you build a marketing department when you don't know anything about marketing? Like, you don't know how to manage them. You don't know what tactics to use. You don't you don't know any of that. Why, like, give it to Parka? Like, all we do is digital marketing for staffing firms. Yeah, like you're gonna pay us a premium and you're not gonna get 40 hours a week of our time, but you're going to get the results that actually drive your business forward. And so, um, yeah, I agree. I remember it was probably 10 years ago or so. I had an uncle that was pretty high up in the sales side of Allstate insurance. And that wasn't employee benefits, obviously, but like Allstate made a decision. They cut like their top 50% of their salespeople because they were sick of paying them. And they had these big books of business that they were just kind of sitting on and coasting, quote unquote. And so they all had to go out and become independent brokers and sell the suite of services like you're saying. So yeah, it's a different world than 30 years ago, whether it's education or professional, right?
Yeah, and I guess the theme would be like if you can build something that has a structure that everybody needs, and then you can put people in place to actually run that structure, like these insurance companies. It works out really, really well. Um, but I want to talk about the marketing piece. Do you guys, Parka, focus on either direct to consumer, or you guys talk working B2B as far as like consulting with these companies to, or is it both?
Yeah, so I guess technically we only sell B2B because we only sell to staffing and recruiting firms. But when we are actually talking about the tactics that our clients use, it's kind of interesting because we actually have three main buckets. Staffing firms need more clients, right? So we do B2B marketing for staffing firms. But they also need candidates. And so we do B2C marketing so that they can get more candidates for their staffing firm. And then third is kind of that talent acquisition space. Is a lot of staffing firms are hiring, 20 to 50 to 100 people a year. And so they also have to have an employer brand. So with, not all of our clients do the full suite of services, but we're working on kind of all the above when it comes to the tactics we actually deploy for our clients.
And so, what sort of marketing are you doing for them to get to these three levels that you're trying to reach?
Yeah, so I guess like the way I describe it usually is kind of like an outsourced CMO or like a full in-house marketing team. So we call it our proven process, but it's essentially brand credibility, online visibility, and then lead generation. And so brand credibility kind of starts with the foundation of, we build websites, we do branding exercises, we do logos and key messaging exercises and all of that, because my quote is, you would never send a salesperson on a sales call in sweatpants and a sweatshirt. And so your online presence has to look as if it was your best salesperson, right? So usually we get that kind of set up first. Then we move into online visibility, and that's really around like search engine optimization, social media management and posting, content creation, whether that's blogs or videos or ebooks or all the different kinds of content that exists today. And that's kind of the phrase I use for that is like, if a tree falls in the woods and no one hears it, doesn't make a noise, right? You could have the best brand in the world, but if no one can find you, it doesn't really matter how good your brand is. And so really building that kind of like organic visibility, and then lead generation is really, you're not going to keep paying us, $5,000 to $10,000 a month if we're not actually positively affecting your business and providing an ROI. And so that's a lot around, paid advertising, whether that's on Google or on social channels. A lot of it now is automation and technology and how we're leveraging databases. Staffing firms have thousands and thousands of people applying every week, and they go into a database and the easy thing is to always think, well, I'm going to go find that person. Well, if you have 30,000 people in your database, that person's probably in your database somewhere. And so really using, math, I guess, for lack of better terminology, but really understanding like where, leads are coming in and where people are actually being placed to understand the ROI of where they should be spending their marketing dollars. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of levels to that as well. So you've got you've got the IT part as far as website SEO and visibility. You've got do you do their social platforms like Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, all of that? And so how many people are on a team that? How many? So if you've got my company and we've got let's just say a 50 employee type of group, and they want to come in and they do something. So what's like the first couple steps you would do to create this new marketing plan?
Yeah. I think that's one of the things we kind of like, I don't know, battle with every day is, everyone wants to come in and on the first day they want to say like, oh my God, like I got this result on the first day. And like anyone that knows about marketing knows like it's not like a get rich quick scheme or put the quarter in and and get results out. And so usually the first month to 2 months of any relationship with us is really focused on setting the strategy. Like we audit every platform that you use, and then we come back to you with a strategy of like, hey, I know you're doing these things or not doing these things, but like to get the results you want, this is what we'd recommend. And that might be a new website. That might be you're posting 18 times a week on social media, and we're like, hey, you might be overdoing it. Maybe 5 times a week is enough. Or, the content you're creating isn't adding any value to your key audience. And so we need to look at a content strategy that is actually engaging your audience. And so on and so forth. Like you said, it's, some of our clients come in and are a little more sophisticated. And so it really is more of like a technology play where we're really auditing their tech stack and understanding what technologies are in play and how they're integrated together and what kind of results they're getting. So, that's, there, like you said, there's a lot of different pieces. Like we essentially have an account management team, a content and creative team, a digital team, and a technology and automation team. And so, kind of like we're talking about for a lot of today is, we have, I think 22 or 23 in-house employees, but then we also have, 20 or 30 external employees or external consultants. That's like, you can't have a technology person that's an expert in Salesforce and HubSpot and Marketo and Pardot. Like, so we have one leader that is very well versed, and then we go out to the market essentially and find the right person to get the best results for our clients.
Got it. And so, based on your experience, what is the easiest way to get organic reach now on social media platforms, whether that be for business or individual? There used to be where you can just like put a hashtag out and then you would be able to get this whole level of being seen.
Yeah.
And that just isn't happening anymore. Like Instagram, for instance, there's really no more organic reach. Twitter, there's really not much organic reach anymore. LinkedIn still has an organic, or still has the ability for organic reach, as far as like individuals and then business to business. But then like TikTok is the biggest organic reach. So how do you help businesses with that? Because to navigate something like, if you're a business, what do you want to put on TikTok? You're not going to put a dance up there, but like it's just really difficult for people to understand some of that. So maybe you can add some clarity to it.
Yeah, I wish I could add clarity. But yeah, like you stated, it's ever evolving, right? And I think, I kind of go back to like, there is no get rich quick scheme. 7-10 years ago, if you're the first on a platform, like you could get that, you could get that bang for your buck. But now everything's evolving so quickly that it really does have to be strategic. And, like for instance, like generally speaking, I would agree with you. Like the demographic on Facebook has changed significantly over the last 3 to 5 years, but Facebook Jobs actually gets a lot of traction for our staffing clients. And so there's a lot of technologies that actually like use AI to qualify candidates before they ever get to a recruiter, so that recruiters don't get bogged down, and they're actually getting a lot of good results from that. TikTok, like you said, TikTok, is essentially the same as Vine or YouTube, but over the last year, like now all of a sudden TikTok is blown up. Vine doesn't exist, and YouTube's still kind of the 10,000-pound gorilla, but it's always changing. And for my industry, like TikTok just announced that they're trialing TikTok Jobs, and so people are actually doing like video resumes online. And so it's something that as an agency, we try to stay ahead of the curve. And even though it's only in beta, like we already have clients asking us like, well, do we have to be on it? What do we do? Like, we don't know anything about TikTok. And it's like, yeah, it's constantly evolving. But like you said, the thing is, like when you used to be able to just like be the first to market, or no one else in your industry was doing it, you could get ahead. But now like everything has to be strategic because everyone else is doing it. And the platforms aren't stupid, right? Like they give everything for free until they can monetize it, and then everything's paid. So we do a lot of paid social for our clients. We do a lot of paid on Google. But when SEO was a big thing 10 years ago, they didn't even have paid ads. Like if you ranked first, you were first. Now, if you rank first in organic on Google, you might not even be on the main page. Like they have ad, then they have local, and then they have like sponsored. And then all of a sudden, halfway down the page is the number one organic search. And so it's just something, that our team is constantly, doing webinars and stuff on like Google's algorithm changes and things they're coming out with. And so I wish I could give you the one one thing to do, but I think it's having an expert partner. Like we always say, like, a staffing firm can hire a $150,000 CMO, but do you really want them designing organic social media posts? Or you can hire a kid straight out of college for $45,000, but you're going to get no strategic direction. And that's where I feel like, having a good digital agency that understands your space kind of gives you the best of both worlds. Like you're keeping up with stuff, but you're also, getting stuff done as well.
Definitely got to keep evolving, and it's just the marketing and it's just there's so much, and it changes so quickly. I don't do any of my either personal or business social media. Like I have access to it, but there's one person that has access to everything, and we trust her to put good content out there, and she does. And it's just it's being constant, and it's being authentic to what your either individual brand or your business is. And I think that's very important. So
Yeah, like you said, especially, well, small and big companies, I guess, but like, you know, as an entrepreneur and an owner, like you're pulled in a million directions. And so even if you don't have an agency, even if you just have a person that's like focused on it, because like you said, it's consistency, it's strategy, it's doing it repetitively, producing good content. And to ask you to write 3 blogs every single week, like it's not realistic, or, to take photos while you're at camp. Like you're with the players, and you're doing the things that, drive revenue, drive impact, drive, all of that. And so, yeah, I just, the people that try to do it on their own in this day and age, it's hard.
For sure. Well, as we wrap up, tell everybody where they can follow you and your businesses.
Yeah, so parkamarketing.com, PARQA. And then as far as myself, with the industry we're in, LinkedIn is definitely the holy grail. So Jared Hummel on LinkedIn. And then, I do quite a few podcasts, but the place I spend most of my time is at staffing and recruiting conferences and state networking groups and stuff like that. So if you're not in staffing and recruiting, I'm probably not as visible, but yeah, definitely out and about in the staffing and recruiting world.
Well, I appreciate you, man, for joining the show. It's been
Yeah.
it's been a great time. We touched a lot of bases, and man, that hour went by pretty quickly. So
I know.
we probably could have gone a couple more hours, but hey, man, I really appreciate you, and just thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, really appreciate it too. Take care, and then hopefully we connect, at some other time. It's cool to see what you're doing.
We definitely will.